So now, again, so the question will be about molecular gastronomy. I said that I have no conflict of interest, except that ideology, which is rigor on truth. Now, I wanted to insist that there is no references on slides, but you can ask me references at any time using my email. This is more or less what we are going to discuss is molecular gastronomy is a scientific activity and there are applications. So I will move directly to this. And what I wanted to say is that there are many confusions in English in particular, because people confuse everything. They confuse science, they confuse applications, they confuse cooking, they confuse molecular gastronomy, molecular cooking, molecular cuisine, and so on. So I will have to explain first. And this is a very, very important slide. When you have an activity, it means that you have a goal and a method. A method in English means a way. Okay, if you have the goal of application, it's not the same goal as science, which means that you have two different methods, okay, to reach these goals. Now, this is an important slide because I put technique, technology, and sciences in front of you. You know, technique in Greek means to do something, so you produce something, okay? Sciences of nature, they produce only some knowledge. They don't make computers. They don't. This is not the goal of sciences of nature. And in the middle, you have technology or engineering. Okay. For food, you have exactly the same. So the technique is producing food. Okay. Food technology is improving the production of food. And for sciences of nature, you study the production. And molecular gastronomy is clearly on your right in green color. So technique, this is a technician. Of course, the technician has to deal with a method. I will not go in detail with this method, but anyway, the main characteristic of technique, if you look well, is they always do it with care, with great care. For example, when you make a roof, it has to be well done. When you make a bridge, it has to stand up for a very long time. And when you want to make a cake, this cake the technician do it very carefully. And the question is why? I propose that when you have such a question, you take the contrary. Imagine that you are a carpenter and you make the staircase on the left. If you invite your friends for dinner, they will break their legs on this awful staircase, which means that no care means I don't love you. And it is the worst. But on the contrary, care means I love you. And it is very important to recognize this particularity of technique. Okay? Of course, for cooking, there is a different question because it's not only a technique, it's also, we speak of culinary art, and it is real art. Not beautiful to see, but beautiful to eat. Like, for example, for music, it's beautiful to hear. For literature, it's beautiful to read. So this is a question. Now, we have to insist that we don't care really about nutrients. We care only about dishes. And the second observation is there is no natural food. It's a big mistake because when you cook, it is artificial. You transform some raw food ingredients into some cooked food. And this is artificial with the real meaning of the word artificial. Okay. Now, if we look in the past, you see that the food was very, very different. For example, at the Renaissance, it was very flat. Now, if you move by 1 century, you see it goes up. And look at food in 3 Michelin star, the best food in 1953. You had trout stuffed with bananas. Can you imagine that today? Nobody will get 1 star. It would be considered ugly. Okay, 3 stars in 1965, a big piece of salmon in a sauce with cream and oxalis and white wine. Very strange. Now, 1966, this is Paul Bocuse. He was world famous. And you see, again, the dish goes up. Now, three Michelin star in 1984, 88, 1994, you see the style is changing. And again, 2008, 17, 18, 18, 18, 18, 19, again, it's changing. Of course, if you see an evolution along one axis, you should ask, what about the second axis? And the second axis can be space. For example, in different countries, you don't have the same food, and the same food, you don't have the same food appreciation. Okay. Now, the question is, of course, if you have two axes, what could be the third one? And this is the big issue, which will be the next culinary art. I don't know, but I have the feeling that it is a very important question for cooks. I'm not a cook. You remember, I'm a scientist. Okay. Now, technology, food design, it's not in the kitchen that you do that. It's an office because it's technology and engineering. So I skip this part because I don't know it well, and I move to science. Okay, so the goal of sciences of nature is to look for the mechanism of phenomena. So it's very clear. So it has nothing to do with technology, it has nothing to do with technique. We look for the mechanism of phenomena. And the method is based on one leg, first experiments, and a second leg, calculation. If you miss one of these two legs, you don't stand up in science. Of course, Francis Bacon said something very important. In science, you have to measure everything. And this is why I propose this view of the method of sciences. Number one, you observe a phenomenon. Number two, you make measurements. Number three, you have equations, laws, let's say. Number four, you make a theory. Number five, you make a prediction based on the theory. And number six, you test experimentally the prediction. So it's very clear, and this is exactly how I work daily with my group. In my lab, we apply this method to all these dishes, you see. These are dishes, and there are many phenomena, for example, the expansion of cakes during cooking, or the apricot turning sour, or anything. So we have a lot of phenomena to explore, and this is what we do. Molecular gastronomy was created in 1988. On this picture, you see me on your left, and my old friend Nicholas Curti. He was Hungarian professor in Oxford of physics, and we created molecular. The name was Molecular and Physical Gastronomy, but for short, we say molecular gastronomy. Okay. Now, I insist my activity is molecular gastronomy, but it's true that for various reasons, I'm also showing applications. I will tell you more about that, but I have to come back about science. The question of science is to make a discovery, and a big question for you in particular is how to make a discovery. So what can be our method for making a discovery? You see, here I will not be able to read all this, but we have many scientific questions in my lab. I take only one. For example, is there a difference between boiling wine or simmering wine? Indeed, the answer is yes. Or when you make a carrot stock, for example, how do the compounds go out from carrots? You see, we have many questions. For some time, I was putting on internet one question by day. And the question is, which one should we choose to make a discovery? I make a comparison with a landscape. You see, you're in the middle. In front of you, you have a fog. You don't see where the discoveries are lying, because otherwise they would not be discovery. Behind you, you can see very clearly the mountain. So imagine that a discovery is like a mountain. The question is to look in front of you and to find a mountain. How can you do that? You cannot try to go up because it could go down later. So which direction should you choose? This picture is funny because on the two roads, on the left and the right, you have Roma. You know, there is a proverb saying that all ways lead to Roma. And it is perhaps the same with science. I don't know exactly. So because I want to make a discovery, I was making a collection of ideas for strategy. If you want to get this list, I can send you a scientific paper that is dealing with this question. Now, I will go into more details about what we do at the lab. For example, we explore meat marinade. Does it go in the meat? You see, with fluorescein, it's not clear. For this experiment, we boiled meat for 2 hours in a solution of fluorescein. And when you cut, you see that there is no fluorescein inside. Of course, it was measured, but you can see it very clearly here. You see that fluorescein is only at the top because the fibers, the muscular fibers were disorganized, and by capillarity, some fluorescein can go in. Also, at the bottom, this is the collagenic tissue. And you see the collagenic tissue is turned into a gel when you boil it. And because it is a gel, the fluorescein can diffuse through the gel. So you see it's not clear, but apparently nothing in, which is very interesting. Now, for some meat, you see clearly that there is some diffusion inside the meat. Now, a second example, Lavoisier, you know, the founder of modern chemistry, Lavoisier published a paper saying that when you make meat stock, if you have more water, you extract more of the meat. Is it true? Is it simply true? Liebig, Justus von Liebig, famous chemist, German chemist, said that something very wrong, by the way. You know, in the old time, it was said that when you make a stock, you put meat into boiling water. Okay. Now, later, it is said that you put meat into cold water. So what should we do? This is the question. No, example number 3. When you make some chicken with tarragon, you see, tarragon contains some para-allyl anisole, the compound for which the molecule is drawn on the left. And this compound is teratogenic and cancerogenic. Does it go into the meat? This is a question that we studied as well. Another one, coffee and tea. You put some particles, solid particles, into liquid. And of course, there is a migration towards the liquid. One of the last example, carrot stock. You put carrot in water, you boil. Onions sauce, you put onion in a solution. And now the question is how? Okay. I will discuss the result only for plant tissues into water. So on the left, we have two equipment to boil water with plant tissue. It was carrots in this experiment. And we analyzed the liquid with NMR spectroscopy on the right. Okay. Very interesting. First about sugars. You see, when you analyze the stock, you recover 3 sugars that are glucose, fructose, and sucrose. Of course, it's D-glucose, D-fructose, and sucrose. The glucose and fructose are the bottom curves. The 2 bottom curves are almost the same. And, you know, for sucrose, you have a big increase during the first 4 hours, and then there is a decrease. How is it possible? Of course, you have 2 possibilities. It can be sucrose going out and then coming in, which is explanation number 1 on the left. But also, sucrose could be hydrolyzed, and then it would make glucose and fructose. Of course, the two possibilities can occur at the same time or with different kinetics, and it is very important. So this was our theory after some time. When you have a plant tissue, you have the channels, xylem and phloem, that take the sap up to the leaves and down to the roots. And when you cut a carrot, for example, you make a carrot slice on your right, by diffusion, you could have the diffusion of sugar and amino acids towards the liquid. Is it possible? What we did first was to put a slice of plant tissue into methylene blue, and you see very clearly in these pictures that the methylene blue is diffusing inside the tissue, which means that if it can go inside, it can go outside. So this theory was not so wrong. So we make equations, we make differential equations or finite elements modeling, but finally the theory was wrong. Look carefully around the channel, you have some blue, and our first theory does not explain this blue. So we had to turn to another more complex theory. So you see in blue at the left, a dark blue, you have one channel. In light blue outside, you have the liquid, and inside you have the cells. And now we introduce new coefficient for exchange. Now, the best we could do in this direction was to show that there were many possibilities, but we showed that more or less the quantity of sugar is the same into the parenchyma tissue and inside the channels. But of course, the diffusion from the channels towards the solution is much faster. Okay, so this is where we are now in this direction. Now, I want to tell you that we have to be very careful about these interpretations, because in the beginning of our work, we were analyzing the liquid by NMR spectroscopy. Okay, when you do that, it takes 5 days, because you take a small sample, you make the first lyophilization, then a second lyophilization, you put it into D2O, then you do it again, and then you make the NMR. Okay. And what you get is a spectrum. This is a spectrum of a carrot stalk. So good news first, you can analyze a carrot stalk, and it is not so complex. Okay. Now, more in details, what you see mainly saccharides. So I told you about glucose, fructose, and sucrose, but you have also some amino acids and organic acid, malic acid, succinic acid, acetic acid, but also threonine, valine, and so on. Okay. So this is quite simple. Now, look, this is a plant tissue. A plant tissue is a gel formally because it is a solid, but it includes a liquid. Is it possible to put a plant tissue directly into the NMR machine and to make a liquid NMR spectroscopy? The answer is yes, and it takes 10 minutes. You cut a very small sample of plant tissue, and you get the same result as in 5 days. And I call that quantitative in situ NMR spectroscopy. The method is very, very good, as you can see. On the left, you have the coefficient, and on the right, you have the distribution of glucose, fructose, and sucrose from the center of the carrot towards the cortical part. So you see, it's very interesting method. Now, we no longer use D2O in my lab to make an NMR spectroscopy. We go it directly in situ, and it's much faster. Of course, you have to integrate the signals very well, because I can tell you that the software for signal integration of NMR are very bad. And the results are bad. For example, here we compared the best analytic method with extraction with the in situ method, and we could demonstrate that there was twice more sucrose than with the extraction. So we have to be very careful when you make an analysis and use extraction. Now, of course, we have to be more general, and I have to come back to gels because gels are so important. Look at food. So this is food, okay? There is a macroscopic organization, a microscopic organization. For example, this is an emulsion with oil droplets dispersed into water. You have three air bubbles, but it is not very important. Now you have a nanoscopic organization in food, and you have even a molecular organization. For example, in this experiment, there were raspberries, and they were added with tin oxide. And you know, the tin oxide is turning the raspberry blue because of phenolics linking to the tin ion. Okay, so there is an organization. So what I did in 2001 was to propose an algebra, let's say a calculus, to describe the physical structure of food. I invite you to use this system. It is very simple. I'm teaching it at master level, but I did it also for chefs. It is very simple. I will not take time today to explain. I will show only how it works. So this is the formula for this macroscopic organization. Now you have the formula for the microscopic organization. Now the formula for the nanoscopic and for the molecular. Until today, we could describe any food system, but of course I have no demonstration that it is perfectly coherent, but it works. So let's go. Let's go about gels. You remember that I told you that a plant tissue is a gel because you have a liquid trapped into a solid. And if you look at the UPAC definition, it is a gel. Okay. Now, if you use the same formula, and you can turn it into a new system that you make. So this one is an artificial orange with orange juice in alginate spheres, and these spheres were glued together. It is like an orange juice. It is an artificial gel based on this formula. Sometimes you have more complex gels. For example, you see the formula for this gel, it's a potato, it's more complex. The formula for meat is more complex as well. Meat is a gel because it is a solid, including a liquid. Chocolate is a gel. It depends on the temperature, but at room temperature, it's a gel as well. And so on and so on. This is gelatin. Gelatin gel, you see, it's a gel, of course. In dark, you have water, and in white, you have gelatin, the protein. Okay, this is an hard-boiled egg. It is also a gel, and so on, and so on, and so on. And you see, the word gel is not enough because we use the same word for two very different systems. So it is not possible to go on with gels. We have to be more precise. And this is why I did a small program to calculate all the possibilities of gel. First, the most simple one, class 1, and there are 16, and only 16. And now for class 2, they are slightly less than 1,500. They are here and here and here and here. So you have all class 2 gels now. Of course, you could go on with class 3 and class 4. So probably the number of possibilities of gel is infinite. But you see, there is plenty of possibilities for innovation because you take one formula and you can turn it into a new gel. So the question is, if you look at nature, which are the formula for natural gels? I don't know now, but what I know is that all these gels they release the compounds differently. For example, some gels, they release the flavor very fast on the left, and for some other gel, the release is very slow. Okay. Can you imagine a gel where there would be the release, then no release, another release, and then another release? So imagine a gel, you eat a piece of cake, for example, and you would have one flavor, then one another flavor, and again, and again, and again. And the answer is yes. If you use the DSF formalism, you can make it. So now I will skip this one about dynagels that are gels that deform when they form. And I come to application because time is running. So up to now, we were discussing only science, but science has applications. One very old application is molecular cooking. So you remember, molecular gastronomy is a scientific activity, and molecular cooking is cooking, which is a technical activity. So the definition of molecular cooking is you cook with tools from the lab. Okay, from the lab of chemistry, from the lab of physics, from the lab of biology. Instead of having pans, you have the hardware from labs. And this is very useful because you can control correctly the temperature, you can filter correctly, you can decant, you can use a rotary evaporator, and so on and so on. So this is the definition of molecular cooking. Okay. Now, there is a difference between molecular cooking and molecular cuisine. Molecular cooking is a technique, molecular cuisine is a style. So I will show you a molecular cuisine menu. Now, this is the menu. Here it is. So you see the name of this dish was the bird's nest. This one was caviar. It's not caviar, of course. This one was balancing meat. This is the chef. And this is the dish. You could eat everything. Now, the name of the dish was the pond under the sea, back in the garden. I go down in my garden in the morning and the mist disappears. Alaska meat. I don't remember the name of this one. Coconut, bed and breakfast, the apple. By the way, this one was very funny because there is a solid outside. Inside there is a liquid. Inside there is a solid. And inside there is a liquid. Of course, you need liquid nitrogen to make this one. Now, this is a dish. It is a dessert called the making up. And finally, the tree. Okay. So personally, for almost 20 years now, every month, I'm giving an invention to Pierre Gagnère. Pierre Gagnère is a 3-star chef. And for example, I give the name of a famous chemist of the past to my inventions. For example, the green part in the middle is called the Liebig. Here, the white part is a Priestley. This is a Wurtz in pink. You know the Wurtz condensations if you are a chemist. This is not a chemist, it's a Neg 67. Nollet was a physicist. Wintrastol is not a chemist. Gibbs, you know the Gibbs function. This is the white part in the middle. And chocolate chantilly is not a scientist, and so on, and so on, and so on. So now, I have to tell you that molecular cuisine is completely over, because you remember that I introduced molecular cooking 40 years ago. 40 years ago, you were not born. So let's move to the future. Okay. So the next application is called note-by-note cooking. Okay. It will be even better than today. I proposed note-by-note cooking in 1994 in Scientific American. And the idea began because my grandfather had plums. And you see, when you have plums, there are plenty of plums on the tree. So you make a tart, a second tart, you make a jam. And after some time, you have enough. What do? You distillate. Okay. And my grandfather was putting a small stick of wood into this bottle. And I was asking him, why do you do that? And the answer was, you know, I don't have barrels, which is wood, outside. And then I'm putting the wood inside, which is very clever. But the question is, why wood? And the answer is now here. In wood, you have some lignin. And if you store the lignin with ethanol, then you cut the lignin into pieces and you have vanillin, vanillic acid, and so on. And these compounds have a very good flavor. And indeed, the brandy become more flavorful. So the question is, a long time ago, because of this chemical modification, I decided to use vanillin and to put into a whiskey, and it gives very good results. So if you do the experiment, you use, for example, 4 or 5 drops of vanilla extract, and you put it into 1 liter of whiskey, and you have a very good result. Now, soon after, a friend of mine discovered that all wine contain paraethylphenol. And I decided to put it into whiskey, and it gives very, very good result. I love Laphroaig or Lagavulin whiskey, and you can get almost the same with paraethylphenol. Okay, so the idea is clear now. Note by note cooking means you don't use meat, fish, vegetables, and fruit. You use compounds, and indeed, it is synthetic food. I mean, like synthetic music. And in order to explain, we have to compare with music. You know, 2 centuries ago, you had the violin, the flute, the trumpet, and so on. 2 centuries ago, you had vegetables, fruits, meat, and so on. 1 century ago, the physicist could make the analysis of music into pure waves. And at the same time, chemists could analyze the food into pure compounds. So it's exactly the same. Now, 50 years ago, you needed a room full of computers to make synthetic music, and today a synthesizer is $20. So what on your right? Of course, note by note cooking. It's obvious. So imagine that you have a carrot. If you are a chemist, you don't see a carrot. You see water first, amino acids, sugars, and so on. So let's use these compounds and organize them differently. And you make, because of combinatorials, you can make billions of new dishes. So innovation is very simple in a way. You take the compounds of food and you use them to make what you want. So you can create the shape, the consistency, the color, the taste, the odor, everything. You can design food entirely, and this is note by note cooking. This idea is very important because some species disappear, so you will not be able to eat some species. There is a possibility of an energy crisis, and in 2050, there will be probably 10 billion people on the earth. We have to feed them, otherwise they will world war. So all the academies of the world have understood that the question is spoilage. If we can fight spoilage, then there is a possibility for humankind. And indeed, there are reasons, because why do we spoil? We have to think correctly. We spoil because we transport some real vegetables and fruits. And it's a pity because look, a tomato is 95% water. So when you transport a truck full of tomatoes, you transport water. The same for an apple or a carrot. So this is crazy. Now it is very simple to fractionate, and you can fractionate, which fractionate means you take a piece of material and you divide into 2 and again into 2 and again into 2. On your left, you have the fractionation of wheat into starch on the left and gluten on the right. You can do that at the farm. The technique is already mature. And you see on the right, you have a fractionation machine for the farm. So we could enrich the farmer, and this would help them to improve sustainable agriculture. So it's very important. Of course, the number of possibilities is infinite. There will be a new art, a new culinary art. And now I will show you some pictures of dishes, note by note dishes, I mean synthetic dishes, that were produced those last years. So on the left, you have my friend Pierre Gagnère, 3-star chef, probably the best of the world. And on your right, you have the first note-by-note dish ever served in a restaurant. It took us 6 months to make it, you see. It was served in Hong Kong. Now this is note-by-note number 2. And now there were more and more people trying to go in this direction. For example, at the Cordon Bleu. Cordon Bleu is a culinary school. There are 51 culinary schools of Cordon Bleu in the world. You see, at the beginning, they were still using some plant tissue, for example, and a mushroom. It is useless, but at the beginning, it was difficult. Here again, there were some leaves. It is useless. There were raspberry. It is useless. Now it's better. 2011, we had a big banquet with Nobel Prize winners, ambassadors, ministers. Here is the menu. So this dish was called the idea of an oyster. There was no oyster, of course. This one was a Wöhler sauce with phenolics. This one was on the left, it is an artificial meat, an artificial carrot. On the right, the ugly thing is real meat. In this one, again, a mistake, they were real fruits. Cordon Bleu, same year, now you have some blue. And now some blue color, very, very good dessert. Now Montreal, Canada. A drink, it's so easy that we should not discuss it. So this was a very good production in Montreal. Here are the pictures. This dish was crazy, I love it. Now Paris, Switzerland, Denmark, again Denmark, again Denmark. We have an international contest. I invite you to participate to this contest. It's still open. The final event, the prize ceremony will be the 4th of June. And for this year, the topic is suspension. I mean, colloidal suspension. So if you want to participate, you just send me an email. I will give you all this information and you can participate to this contest. There is a special slot for students, a special slot for chefs, and a special for lay people. So the winner in 2014 was a Belgian guy, a Belgian student. And 2015 was people from Switzerland. These are artificial sushi by a chef. And now we have some companies. We have. I don't have anything because remember that I don't sell anything. But there is a new company selling some odorant products. And now there is a chef at the bottom, and the chef has a restaurant in Poland, entirely note by note. So you see, these are note by note dishes served in this restaurant in Poland. Of course, a green burger, very funny. This one is beautiful, very, very, very good. This one interesting as well. Again. Okay. Now, in Alsace is a country between France and Germany. And you see, there was a chef, he wanted to make a high-level menu, and he did it for 60 people. Julien Beans, here is the chef, and here is the menu. It was incredible. I would say that of course, it's not an egg. I would say that the most interesting part of this menu was here. You know, the small green macaron was, the flavor was incredible. I still have it in my mouth because it was so good. Okay. Now, Greece, April 2018. Of course, we had again some note-by-note mixology. You remember that you could say synthetic mixology as well, because it is synthetic food. You can say synthetic or note-by-note is the same. This is a Greek menu, very clever, very well done, beautiful consistencies, beautiful flavors, beautiful appearance. This one was a dessert. It was an artificial fruit. Here is when it's open. And Singapore, to finish, they did some Cantonese synthetic food. Cantonese note by note. By the way, it is the culinary school where it was done is called At Sunrise, and they teach note by note cooking. They sell courses of note by note cooking today. So here is the menu. You don't know well by only with the picture, but I can tell you that the small piece on the top right was incredible. The consistency was incredible. On the top left, it's an artificial plant tissue. Save the sharks. For them, it was very important to save the sharks because it was the same consistency of fin shark soup. And a dessert, of course, another one. And finally, I come back to the question. So you see the green arrow, it's molecular gastronomy, it's scientific activities. This is what I told you. Now, of course, in pink, you have cooking, and cooking has a technical component, an art component, but as well a love component. When you cook for someone, it means I love you. And this is why it is so incredible to cook. It's not only technique. It's not the question of moving your fingers and whipping the egg white. But of course, the two activities are very different. Molecular gastronomy is spreading all over the world. Now there are 34 labs in universities where scientists, teachers, university teachers, and students work in molecular gastronomy. And I'm very happy to announce that after 4 years of efforts, we are going to publish next month this handbook of molecular gastronomy. It is a big book, 1,000 pages, almost 700 pictures, 150 chapters. And this book has 3 parts. The first part, of course, it's science, scientific activity, molecular gastronomy. And then there are 2 parts, application of molecular gastronomy to education, from primary school to university, and application to culinary art. And this is my last slide. Again, I give you my email. I invite you to join to this wonderful adventure, scientific adventure of molecular gastronomy. Okay? And now I'm ready for question, of course. I'm stopping the sharing. Was it all right? Could you hear me?
Yes, we could hear you.
Very good.
So it looks like we have a question from one of our attendees. And if you want, I think you can turn on your camera.
Okay. Where is it, my camera? My camera, where is my camera? I don't see my camera.
If that's okay. It's probably better.
No, but I will try to do that. Where is my camera?
In the meantime, everybody, any attendees, you can ask your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, and I can read them out loud.
My camera disappeared.
It's okay. It's no problem. We have one question that is, how accessible do you believe that note-by-note cooking techniques may become? Do you anticipate domestic use being widespread of the note-by-note cooking techniques?
Oh, you know, I come back to the dinner in Alsace, you know. After the dinner, the chef made an evaluation of the event. So first of all, it took him only 2 months to learn it. So it was very fast. The chef is a Michelin star chef, okay? So he has a small restaurant. There are only 5, and he was learning note-by-note cooking while he was having his restaurant running. So he had no free time in a way. But in 2 months, with only 2 telephone calls with me, he was able to make the menu. So it was incredible. But after the menu, he made an evaluation. The price of the raw ingredients was divided by 2 compared to ordinary food. And the time of production was divided by 2.5. So you see, it was very fast, very cheap, and very good. So I would say that the worst question is the acceptability. It's not the technical question, is many people are not ready for that. But just like for synthetic music, you know, when 50 years ago, when you were speaking of synthetic music, people were saying, wow, it will be ugly and so on. Today, when you have a radio, you have only synthetic music. So I'm almost sure that because of the growing food population, node by node cooking will be there, and it's slightly appearing. You know, there are more and more chefs all over the world, so I'm very confident. And by the way, I don't have anything to sell, so I don't care.
All right. Are there any other questions from the audience? Feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A box. We have a couple more minutes left. So, oh yeah, okay. So what is the nutritional content of the molecular gastronomy techniques? So what is the nutritional content of these techniques?
Okay, there is a slight mistake in this question because there are no molecular gastronomy techniques. There are molecular cooking techniques or there are node by node cooking techniques. I guess that the question is about node by node, not molecular gastronomy. Okay, and the answer is what you want. If you want to put more proteins, you put more proteins. If you want to put less lipid, you put less lipid. If you want to make less sugar, you put less sugar. So you design entirely. So you design entirely, even from the nutritional point of view. You see? And by the way, it will be always a gel. And this is why I was focusing on gel so much, because gel is, you know, when you have plant tissue, I mean, when you have a vegetable, a fruit, a meat, or a fish, it's a gel. So tomorrow, node by node cooking will producing gels, and the gel will include what you want. Vitamins, oligoelements, and you know, we have to recognize that today, the nutrition of people is bad. And in particular in the US, there are many people that are obese. If they are obese, it means that they don't eat well, and their food is not adapted to their way of life. And this is why designing food is so important, because you design food according to your own way of life. If you move less, you put less energy, less calories in it. So, but you still need to have the oligoelements, the vitamins, the phenolics, the antioxidants, and so on. And we have to learn how to design carefully all this food.
Awesome. So another person asked, if we wanted to start molecular cooking for ourselves, do you have any advice on where to start or good resources to learn more?
Yes, you could start. I mean, it's very simple. First of all, if you send me an email, I will send you recipes. Now, in the internet site of AgroParisTech, we display the recipes of the competitors of the node by node contest. So it's a good way to start as well. It's very simple. The most difficult is to find the odorant compounds. And this is why I insisted on the small company. By the way, the small company that is selling the compounds is called Ikemusu. And the company was founded by a young student, a chemistry student, some years ago. The guy is today 25 or 26. And the price is not very expensive. He's selling all over the world. He will probably become a billionaire soon. He proposed to me to give me 50% of the share of his company for free, and I refused. So I'm very free to advertise for this company. Ikemusu. You find it on internet, ikemusu.com.
Okay, great. So I don't think we have. Okay, so everybody, last call for questions. If you have any more, I'll give it another couple of seconds to type your question. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Dr. Thies, for coming today. It was a really interesting conversation, and I liked being able to hear about the chemistry concepts that I've learned in class and applying it to cooking and this food. It was really interesting to see all these pictures too as well. So if there are no more questions, then I guess I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And I hope you enjoyed our event.
Thank you. I cannot open my camera, but I see you. Thank you for the kind invitation. Do well.
Thank you so much.